There are 11,000 species of birds and 17,500 species of butterflies in the world. Here in Alberta, we have 438 species of birds and 170 species of butterflies. This series will explore some of these incredible species and the amazing people in our community who are working to protect them. First, I wanted to share my story about what got me interested in nature. I was born with a rare heart condition in Edmonton, Alberta. They worried I would not make it, and before the age of 4, I required 4 major open heart surgeries. After one of these surgeries, I had a feeding tube and refused food. After many failed efforts to get me to eat, my parents took me in the woods and offered me a Saskatoon berry. This was the first food after the operation that I accepted, I'm told. I like to think my connection with nature started there. And Saskatoon berries to this day are my favorite. Growing up, my childhood was very difficult. Despite the challenges I faced, I'm grateful that my parents instilled a deep appreciation for nature in me from an early age. And I'm grateful that I grew up with a backyard that I could run around in. When things were hard, I'd venture into our backyard as an escape. Nature was a safe place where I could be myself. Some of my favorite childhood memories include catching frogs, watching swallowtail butterflies, singing back to chickadees, and looking for fleeting glimpses of bats against the night sky. I really cherished visits to Elk Island National Park, Beaver Hill Natural Area, and other parks where I remember I loved seeing the bison, watching the sunsets, and seeing geese fly over the lake. Nature has always been special to me. In university, I was incredibly grateful for the opportunity to research American pike and their vocalizations for my undergraduate honors psychology thesis with Dr. Shannon Digweed. Many people are surprised to hear this, but comparative psychology is a branch of psychology that studies the behavior and cognitive processes of animals and people. Some of these courses were my favorite throughout my degree. I loved the entire research process, from the field work to the data to the writing and presenting. When I graduated with my undergraduate degree, it was during the COVID-19 pandemic, so to stay safe with my heart condition and being immunocompromised, I knew I had to look into online programs as my next step. I was accepted into a Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology program that offered an online program allowing me to learn from home at the time, and an in-person component later where I would gain skills during my practicum. I loved learning how to hold safe spaces for people to process their feelings, pain, and trauma in. I also love volunteering outdoors with nature organizations any chance that I could. These experiences solidified for me how strongly I feel that we need safe spaces for people and animals for positive change in the world. Meanwhile, I felt passionate about research and conservation, and I knew I wanted more fieldwork experiences. So when I had the opportunity to complete a grassland breeding bird census internship at Beaver Hill Bird Observatory, I was beyond thrilled. I loved the early mornings, hearing the dawn chorus, and learning where different species had their territories. Soon after, I was hired as an assistant biologist to help with owl banding and their education program. I loved banding owls in the fall, and I enjoyed traveling to classrooms to teach kids about bird biology and conservation in the winter with their education birds. During my graduate program, I also created a research proposal to monitor monarch butterflies and their habitats in Alberta. I learned that there was no formal monitoring of their breeding habitat, so completing these surveys and contributing to the larger database felt important, especially considering how vulnerable they are. I'm so grateful that I found a research supervisor, Dr. Andrew Fuyarchuk, who, as a fellow nature lover, believed in and supported my project. There's a bit about my story and how I came to love nature, including birds and butterflies. I feel passionate about interpretive work and science communication, and this is where the idea for this series began. In this series, I want to make information about birds and butterflies and their conservation accessible. I believe that community mental health and nature conservation are connected systemic issues, and I think that the more people learn about the incredible species living in their own backyards and parks, the more people will feel motivated to protect them. I think conservation takes a community. So this series will explore incredible community members who care for these species in a variety of different ways. Next, we'll hear from others about why they love birds.
I think just everything about them is so interesting. They're such funny, intelligent creatures. It's hard to ignore them, I think. And I like that birds have their own world going on outside of human beings. Just their own dramas, their own relationships with one another and other animals. And they just have such a rich world that, you know, we can have a look into. And it's a good reminder that there's so much going on outside of humans. And I think it's just fun just to see, yeah, how they all have such different like ecological niches or foods they eat, or even how much they've changed with how much their environment has changed with how, you know, bigger cities have gotten and things like that. There's always such a question and curiosity that comes with seeing a bird doing something. Like, why is it doing that? Where do they go during the winter? Like, once you start noticing them, I think it just opens such a door of noticing all these different things, which just leads to more curiosity and also the histories of how humans have always loved and noticed and appreciated birds.
Well, they bring a lot of life into the environment, right? With their songs and their activities and whatnot. So that's pretty awesome. A lot of different species, and then it can be a really interesting pastime to start to learn to be able to identify, you know, different sparrows from each other, and learn about all the birds that are in the province and in the country. So that's it was the birding that really brought me into that activity.
Their color, their behavior, part of it is their magic of flight. And back then, of course, we didn't know that they're actually remnants of dinosaurs, which we now know. But back then, the first fossils of Archaeopteryx were appearing. People were puzzling over where did birds come from. So to me, it's extra special now to think that these are actually dinosaurs that survived the apocalyptic meteorite that hit the Earth. And we now get to enjoy them, and they've diversified into, you know, thousands and thousands of forms that have all interesting biologies and ecologies.
Birds meant something special to me, and they're also something that everyone can connect with everywhere. There's birds all over the world, and that just really opens your horizons as soon as you realize, you know, there's the same birds here as there are down in Mexico. They migrate from here to there. Do you ever wonder if it's the same exact bird that was in your own backyard as is, you know, down in Mexico when you go for a visit? I think about that all the time. I think they're just a universally exciting creature to know and to discover. There's over 10,000 species of birds around the world, and I think, I mean, I want to see them all. It probably won't happen, but it's so exciting to know that there's basically endless possibilities in the bird world.
Birds and butterflies can clearly inspire curiosity, excitement, and joy within us with their beautiful colors, interesting behaviors that we like to witness. But birds and butterflies also matter because they provide a lot of important services to our ecosystem. Ecosystem services refer to the different things that animals do that also benefit us as humans. For example, pollination. A lot of these critters help pollinate the plants that we rely on for food. Birds also help control insect and rodents, and they're also involved in seed dispersal. Without larger birds of prey taking care of carrion, there would also be more risk of spreading disease. So for a lot of these reasons, it's important that birds and butterflies and other pollinators continue to be a part of the ecosystems. Very interestingly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we noticed that people started spending a lot more time outside. And with that, there was a lot more engagement with the natural world around people wanting to learn more, people taking up new nature-based activities.
There's that big boom during the pandemic of, there's news articles about it where people were really getting into birding from things like Facebook and other online sources. So I was definitely part of that boom where, there was a moment where we could just kind of take a pause with a lot of stuff for a lot of folks. So I was definitely part of that movement of getting into birds. And, social media is bad in a lot of ways, but there are some positives, including that kind of online birding community.
So we've talked a bit about why people love birds and butterflies. We've also started to explore why they're important for our ecosystem. And next, I wanted to know what bird conservation meant to people.
Bird conservation to me means a lead into environmental conservation. So birds don't exist in isolation, nor do we. We're all part of the global environment, the small planet Earth. And birds, to me, are intriguing in themselves, but they're also a lead-in to public education, to getting people to be more aware of their environment. And if things are impacting birds, then that's going to impact us. And subsequent research showed that was true. We've now got neonicotinoids that are killing the insects on the planet. Our swallows and flycatchers are declining. They've become the bird in the canary in the coal mine that are cautioning us that we better watch what we're doing, because we think we're independent of insects, but we're not. We're totally dependent on them for pollinating virtually all the foods that we eat. So if we don't have those pollinators, we're going to find our crops decreasing in abundance, and then we've got our major food problems. So we're all interlinked, and we have to be careful of what we're doing.
Bird conservation is, we have to tackle it from all angles, whether, on a small interpersonal scale, like personal education or bird watching, to stuff that's way bigger, like laws and policies being implemented. I think we can all have different places that we have our passion and caring about conservation, and it really does take all kinds of strategies to be able to make conservation happen. So whether we're educating, young children like myself when we went to Ducks Unlimited and kind of getting that spark of joy from birds and caring about them, to things like that community building, going bird watching as a group with people, having those educational kinds of, tours and stuff of bird observatories, and then all the way up to being able to have, planting native plants for birds and the bugs that they eat, as well as larger scale things like laws and policies, which have such a big impact. So I don't want to think that any one way is the right way. They just have different effects in different ways. And I think where we can put our passion in a sustainable way is how we can make change. So for some people, it looks different than for other people. So wherever you feel that passion, I think that's where we should go down so that we could keep doing it for, as long as we can.
There is, a lot to be concerned about, like our aerial insectivores are decreasing. There's lots of birds that are dropping in number, and it's quite frightening. I think we can make a positive difference through habitat conservation, awareness of different practices that are harming birds, like window strikes. There are many different ways for people to get involved with bird conservation, whether you're into that education component or more into the research component. Maybe you want to clean out nest boxes, record data. There are so many different local groups that you can get involved with to do that kind of work.
So it's just an awareness of, well, first knowing what birds are around, and then getting a baseline of what their populations are. And then, from that baseline, you can notice if the population is going down, and you say, okay, so what can be causing that? Is there any human disturbance that's causing that decline? Are there any human obstacles being set up that are keeping the birds from doing what they need to do? And then you can work at improving that situation.
As we have explored in this episode, nature conservation can happen at the personal, political, societal, and structural level. And we can all take part in nature conservation in our own ways. I believe one of the first steps is through education and learning about what kind of critters live around us. So I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for taking time to learn about why people love birds, some of the meanings that they can hold, and why we should consider protecting them. I hope you'll continue to join us on this journey to learn about the exciting species that call this city and area home.